My Japanese grandmother is 81 years old, and as far as I know, she has never once put a load of laundry in a dryer. Not because she doesn't have access to one. We have one. It sits in the laundry room, mostly unused, like a piece of furniture nobody quite agreed to buy, but nobody got rid of either. She hangs everything, always has. Rain or shine, summer or winter, there's a rack or a line somewhere with clothes drying on it, the way there has been for as long as I can remember. When I moved into my first apartment, I bought a drying rack. Not because I'd thought deeply about energy bills or fabric care. I just did what she did, the way you do things you watch someone do for 20 years without ever being taught them directly. A few years later, I actually looked at the numbers, and the dryer turned out to be one of the most expensive appliances in an American home to run regularly. Not dramatically expensive in any single use, but every single day, for years, it adds up to a real number. My grandmother never made a decision about this. She just never started. And once I started noticing that pattern in her, not deciding against modern conveniences, just never adopting them in the first place, I started seeing it everywhere. Small things. Habits so unremarkable to her that she's never once described them as frugal. To her, they're just how you do things. I want to walk through a handful of them, not as a list of tips exactly, more like a tour through a kind of life that never had to unlearn anything because it never picked up the expensive habit to begin with. The first one is the dryer, which I've already mentioned, but it's worth sitting with for a second longer because of what it represents. A dryer doesn't just cost money to run, it also wears out clothes faster. The heat and tumbling break down fibers over time in a way that air drying simply doesn't. So the dryer is, in a very literal sense, a machine that costs you money to use, and also shortens the life of the thing you're using it on, so that you need to replace that thing sooner, which costs more money. My grandmother's clothes last an extremely long time. Some of her cardigans are older than I am, and I don't think this is because she buys exceptionally durable clothing. I think it's largely because nothing she owns has ever been through a tumble dryer. The second one is leftovers, and this is where things get a little more involved because my grandmother's relationship with leftovers isn't really about leftovers at all. It's about never really having leftovers as a category in the first place. In a lot of American households, leftovers are what's left after a meal, extra food that gets put away and then fairly often forgotten about until it's no longer good. My grandmother cooks in a way where almost nothing is ever extra. Vegetable ends go into a bag in the freezer for stock. The water from boiling vegetables doesn't get poured down the drain. It becomes the base for soup the next day. A bit of rice that didn't get eaten becomes something else entirely the following morning. Not reheated rice, but a different dish altogether. The mindset isn't don't waste leftovers. It's that the category of waste barely exists because everything has already been mentally assigned a second use before it even becomes extra. I remember asking her once why she kept a bag of vegetable scraps in the freezer, and she looked at me like I'd asked why she kept her wallet in her bag. It wasn't a system to her, it was just where vegetable scraps go. The third one is clothing, but specifically the way she shops for it, which is really the way she doesn't shop for it. My grandmother owns very few clothes. What she owns, she has owned for a long time. When something wears out, she repairs it. And I mean actually repairs it, sewing, patching, the whole thing, for far longer than most people would consider reasonable. When something is truly beyond repair, she replaces it, but slowly and usually with something extremely simple. Not because she can't afford better, because to her the relationship between an item of clothing and its cost isn't really about the price tag. It's about cost divided by years of use. A coat that costs 3 times as much but lasts 5 times as long isn't expensive to her. It's cheap. A coat that's inexpensive but falls apart in a year is the expensive one, even though the number on the receipt is smaller. This is a genuinely different way of doing arithmetic than the one most of us were raised with, where the number on the price tag is the cost, full stop. My grandmother's version of the math includes time as a variable. Mine, growing up, didn't. The fourth one is heating, and this is the one that, when I first really paid attention to it, made me feel a little ridiculous about my own habits. My grandmother's house, and this was true in Japan, and it's been true here too, is not uniformly heated. There isn't a thermostat set to a comfortable number for the whole house all the time. Instead, specific rooms are heated when they're being used, and the rest of the house exists at whatever temperature it naturally is. If she's in the kitchen is warm. If she's not in the bedroom is cold, and that's fine, because nobody's in it. This sounds almost too simple to be a hack, and I think that's exactly the point. It's not a trick. It's just an assumption that heating a room you're not in is a strange thing to do, an assumption that most modern homes are built around the opposite of. I grew up in houses where the whole place was kept at one temperature all the time, and it never occurred to me that this was a choice, let alone an expensive one. It was just how houses worked. My grandmother's house never worked that way, and the difference over winter is not small. The fifth one is about repair, But I want to be specific about what I mean because fix things instead of replacing them is advice you've probably heard 100 times and mostly ignored, the same way I did. What's different about my grandmother isn't that she's especially handy. It's that her first instinct when something breaks is never, I need to buy a new one. It's what's wrong with this one, specifically. A kettle that stops heating evenly, a zipper that's stuck, a chair leg that wobbles. In most households, including the one I grew up creating for myself as an adult, these things get replaced fairly quickly because diagnosing and fixing them feels like more effort than it's worth. My grandmother's first move is always to look closely at the actual problem. Not, this is broken, but this specific part, in this specific way, isn't working. And very often, once you isolate the actual issue, the fix is small. A zipper pull can be replaced without replacing the whole jacket. A wobbly chair leg can be tightened or shimmed. A kettle's heating element might just need cleaning. The replace first instinct treats objects as wholes. The whole thing either works or it doesn't, and if it doesn't, you get a new whole thing. My grandmother treats objects as collections of parts, most of which are still fine, with one small part causing the entire problem. This takes more time than buying a replacement. It almost always costs less money. And it means that the things in her house tend to stick around for a very long time, not because they're indestructible, but because they keep getting small interventions instead of being discarded at the first sign of trouble. None of these 5 things, on their own, are dramatic. A drying rack, a bag of vegetable scraps, a coat she's owned for over a decade, a cold room she's not currently in, a kettle she fixed instead of replaced. But I think what ties them together isn't really about money, even though they all save money. It's that none of them required her to give anything up. She's not cold in winter. She's warm in the room she's in. She's not eating bad food. She's eating extremely good food, food that happens to use everything. She's not wearing worn-out clothes. She's wearing clothes that have simply lasted because they were cared for. The American version of frugality, at least the version I grew up around, often frames saving money as a kind of sacrifice. You give something up, comfort, convenience, quality, in exchange for spending less. My grandmother's version doesn't really involve giving anything up, because she never structured her life around the things that would need to be given up in the first place. The dryer was never part of her routine, so not using it isn't a sacrifice. The thermostat was never set to heat empty rooms, so turning it down isn't a deprivation. And I think that's the actual lesson, if there is one. Not do these 5 specific things. It's that a lot of what feels like frugality, like restraint, like doing without, is really just the absence of habits that were never necessary to begin with. My grandmother never had to give up the dryer because she never started using it. I did have to give it up, in a sense, or at least I had to notice it and decide and change something. The habits she has are not the result of discipline. They're just what was left after a lot of modern conveniences simply never got adopted. And once I started paying attention, I realized that most of what I think of as normal is actually just a long list of things I picked up without ever really choosing them. If there's someone in your life whose habits seem old-fashioned in a way that, on closer inspection, just seem like good sense, I'd like to hear about them in the comments.